Today on Miniature Mashup, giant fish versus boat.
Now I am making your silver pants blue.
This week we're going to be making a couple sort of an aquatic encounter here. First step is going to be making a boat out of a bottle of lemon juice. This is Food Lion's large bottle of lemon juice. They've got two sizes. I've got a plastic Halloween novelty skull, some barbecue skewers, some cheap packing styrofoam, cardboard. I'm going to be using a couple of little washers here, ones that aren't quite right for basing models. Now the first thing you want to do on that bottle is take the label off, and then you're going to try to find the plastic seam on the bottle. That's exactly where you want to cut it. I'm making a little groove in it right now with a razor knife, just going along the sides. But what I'm going to ultimately end up doing is cutting the bottom of this bottle off with that razor knife. There's sort of a bottom lip. It's kind of like an ashtray here. I'm circling my finger around it now. And I'm just going to slice that off altogether and then go along that seam with a pair of scissors. And you want to cut that seam as neatly as possible. Same with the bottom of the bottle. You're going to want to remove that as neatly as possible as well. And here I am coming in with the scissors, just cutting that nice and slow. It's a little weird because it's ridged. Just do your best to keep your hands steady, keep your eye on that seam, and you'll be fine. You'll get it nice and clean cut. And the reason you're doing that is because these bottles have these neat little leaves sort of embossed on the top, and that works really good with the boat. It looks like something that's been carved in. It's nice. It actually amplifies what the finished product's going to be. Now we're going to hack the bottle top off with our safety knife. If you slip here like I do and you add an extra cut, a little bit of a sloppy cut, you can always go back and fix that with a hot glue gun, which is what I'll do later. Now you want to make sure we get as much of that label off as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to break out the glue gun or anything, but I just want to peel that off. Now I'm going to trace on my very cheap styrofoam along the back end of the bottle. We're sort of making the back of the ship here out of that. Just no need to use fancy foam that you would use for terrain or anything. Just going to make this semicircle here, and I'm going to cut that out with my razor knife as much as possible. Have to pop off a little bit of it, which makes it a little bit of a rough finish, but it doesn't matter because you're not going to see this styrofoam when the boat is finished. It's just there to act as a skeleton for the boat. Now I'm going to punch a couple of holes in the sides of the boat here in the very, very back, and then using the same nail I used to punch that hole, I'm going to secure that piece of foam into the back of the boat with those nails, pushing them back through the holes into the styrofoam itself, which is going to give us a little structure here. And then I'm going to put some hot glue over those nails as well. And the next step after hot gluing those nails in is we're going to sort of make the spine of the boat. We're going to cut another piece of styrofoam here. Better to cut it a little long and trim out what doesn't fit. And I'm just going to take a nice toothpick or a piece of a barbecue skewer. I'm going to stuff that through the styrofoam and then cut that off, whatever excess is coming out of the back of the boat, and then also secure that with a little bit of hot glue as well. Now once that spine is in there, we can start putting our planks in our ship, and those are going to be made out of these big popsicle sticks. We're just going to mark that popsicle stick with a pencil, get an idea about where we need to cut it. Again, it's better to cut it a little too long at first and then trim it to where you need it. If you cut it too short, you won't be able to use that popsicle stick on this project. And we're going to want to cut about 8 or 9 of these to fill this boat up and get a handful here. Those are going to be our planks. Try to get them as uniform as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm just going to hot glue them in onto the styrofoam. Try to do this in ventilated areas because when that hot glue hits that styrofoam, it's a little rough. It's a little bit of toxic fumes coming at you, and that's no fun for anybody. And just one plank after the next until we fill up the boat. The very end one, you're probably going to have to cut, like I did, a little bit and give it a little bit of a curve so it fits with the curved shape of the front of the boat. No, I'm not using a lot of nautical terms here. I'm sure other Navy folks are tearing their hair out. But you see, it looks pretty nice. But we're also going to cover the very ends of those boards, which will make it look even nicer, makes it look even more uniform. I'm going to cut up a barbecue skewer, wooden barbecue skewer out of a sack from Walmart. Probably cost $1 for the whole sack. And I'm just going to use my hot glue gun, lay down a line of hot glue, and throw a barbecue skewer on either side. And the overall effect is quite nice. You don't want it to go all the way back to the foam, because then you won't be able to get boards in there later. So make sure you leave yourself some room to put some vertical popsicle sticks. Now I'm going to do the front right now, because I'm just wondering how that's going to work with the boards. And I put a little hot glue in there. And I've got my plastic Halloween novelty skull, which I'm sure I bought a sack of them for $1 or something after Halloween. It fits in there quite nicely. I don't have it 100% straight, but I think it still works. You can take a little more time with it than I did and get that skull to sit in there perfectly straight. I kind of like it looking off to the side. It makes it look like maybe it's, animated or live. Now we're going to start covering up the rest of that foam that we have in the back here. I'm just putting some planks, and I'm sort of leaving the margins alone. We're going to fill those in with barbecue skewers later, but in order to make room for those skewers, we're going to carve out the foam that's remaining with our safety knife. I want a railing around the edge of the ship as well to break it up. Looks a little better with the railing, and those are also going to be made out of barbecue skewers. I'm just going to measure it out first and then cut it. It's going to sit there, hot glued onto the plastic, and the overall effect's quite nice. It's better, certainly better than without. We want to conceal that this is a bottle as much as possible, so do that on both sides. You see it starts to come together, starts to look like something. And I'm going to make the railing on the front of the boat just out of hot glue. It's not going to be quite the right thickness to match all the way around, but again, having that railing certainly looks better than not having it. And we're going to do that on both sides of the ship. Now, what I did late is I cut the holes for the oars after I did all the railing. Do the holes for the oars first. It'll make life a little easier. And I just dremeled those holes in. And then I used a little E6000 to put some washers on the side there, so it looks intentional. Gives it a nice look. And we're going to make the oars out of cardboard and toothpicks. That's all they are. It's cardboard and toothpicks and hot glue. And I'm going to hot glue them into place. And we can take a look at the finished boat here. At least structurally, it's just about done. I'm going to put a fat popsicle stick underneath, so it has sort of a base. Otherwise, it will rock and roll on you, especially if you put miniatures on one side or the other. It's going to tip. It's going to maybe pop those oars off. I mean, they're fairly sturdy, but why mess around with it? Let's just get that thing where it's going to sit on its own. We don't have to worry about it. So let's take a look. Here it is completed. Let's see how it painted up. And you can see I went through a few different coats, a few different ideas with the wood. Here it is. That's burnt umber all over it. Then I dry brushed something kind of nasty over it to sort of bring out the wood fibers. And put a little bit of twine. I have a little bit of rough rope that I hot glued in place there, so it looks nice. Painted some details on the skull, put a couple of reflective things inside the eyes. Did the railing in silver. Put some stuff on the back to look sort of like metal structures, reinforcement structures. Those are actually from Halloween novelties as well. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how it looks. It's not the best looking boat in the world. It isn't like a model boat or anything. It looks very homemade, but I think it's quite passable and not bad for something made out of a piece of garbage. So on to the next project. I've got a wooden fish here. This is a wooden koi sculpture I got for 50 cents at a Goodwill. And I'm going to modify it because right now it looks like a goofy koi. So it's going to need a jaw. And I'm making that out of a 2-part epoxy. I'm just going to affix that to the mouth. I want to add some sort of predator teeth to it and make it look a little more fearsome. And it really pays off. I've taken some advice given to me by the viewers, which is on the tools I'm using toothpicks instead of a nail. That's what I was using last time, was a nail to sculpt. This time I've got toothpicks and also a little bit of olive oil to put on it so it slides through, doesn't pull the epoxy. It works quite nice. Now I've built the jaw and I'm using toothpicks, broken toothpicks for teeth, which look like nice fish teeth. And I've got some extra epoxy, so I'm going to give it kind of a third mutant eye on top of its head, which is just a plastic bead, and I'm going to sculpt that in. And as we can see, it painted up pretty nice, poetry green, lemonade dry brush on top. I put some spots on it that try to kind of match fish markings. I think the fish eyes came out pretty good. They're a mix of a color called champagne. It's a metallic and gold. The fins are just burnt umber and brown, much like the ship. Different shading on it. Keep in mind this is a 50-cent knickknack turned into a gargantuan size monster. So pretty happy with that. Guys, thanks for watching Miniature Mashup. I'll